Let's open with the word of prayer. Holy God, we thank you. We ask that you would guide, direct, and bless us in this study. That we might have a clearer understanding of what we're supposed to understand. That we might view both the law and our relationships in the correct way. In Jesus' name, amen. So we've been trying to discuss the terms and conditions for divorce. And I think we've agreed that death is a valid reason. The Bible speaks also of, I'll call it adultery. But it's sex specifically. And the reason for that we've identified it as sex specifically, is because collectively, as I'll say, as societies or psychologically, we've come to understand that adultery is more than just the physical. So Jesus will talk about the lust of the eye, looking upon somebody, and if it's not exactly the same thing, at least it's related. So I'll put the eye, that's what Jesus says. And then I'll put something that today is discussed, the emotions. We discussed this last year. This is the subject of emotional adultery. So I presume that's not a new concept to any of us. So it's very hard to divorce somebody over the eye. Or the emotions. And if we were to combine, if we were to rephrase these three elements, we could condense them into what? Anyone has any thoughts? Sex is what? Okay. And the eye, is the eye and emotions the same? Could we make them the same? And what term would we use? So mind, I'll put thought if that's okay. So we have physical adultery and adultery of the mind or thoughts. Are we all okay if I were to say that in Matthew 5, 27, 28, that's what's being discussed there? You okay if I expressed it that way? So I want to choose some different words now. We've gone from sex, eye, emotion to physical and thought. So this is the issue that Jesus is going to address in Matthew 5. He says, you've heard that it's bad to have sex outside of marriage. And then he said, what did he say? But I'm telling you, what am I telling you? Do we need a mic or I'll just repeat that. But if you think about, I was going to say, if you think about sex, that's bad. We okay with that? It's just sort of phrasing it that way. So when Jesus says you've heard, I want to put something connected with the physical. Jesus is going to say, you've heard about the physical, but I want to tell you about the thought. Are we okay if I express it that way? And which is worse, according to what Jesus said, in your opinion? The the physical, or I'll call it the act, or the thought? So Gloria said the thought. Anybody disagree with Gloria? The thought is worse than the action, or more serious than the action. And Debbie, you disagree, or you have a question?
What we were learning before, I came to understand the action would be what would be judged, not the thought.
Have you finished? Have you finished? Because I can't see your face. What was my question that I just asked? Didn't hear whom. So Debbie said she thought that she had learnt or heard that you'd be judged on the action, not on the thought. Is that accurate to what you said? And what did I just ask? What was my, I gave my specific question, which I can't remember the exact word, so it's not that specific.
What is worse, the physical or the thought?
So that's a fair approximation of what my question was. And Debbie subtly changed it, my question, to what you'd be judged on. I asked which is the worst. So in your minds, you might think worse means judge. So I guess that's what Debbie was thinking. So if you can try and not use the word judge, what did Jesus say the worst thing is? The thought or the action? Thought. So we're agreeing with Gloria that it's the thought. Anyone else?
I think worse is the act because that's what hurts the woman.
I'm not asking what you think. I was asking you what Jesus thinks.
Opinion, he doesn't say what is worse in that text.
Oh, let's have a look. While we're looking, Kachi had his hand up, I think.
My hand up, disagree with Gloria, so that was for that.
Carry on. Fine. So you're saying the action is worse? You didn't with Denisa? Are you saying Jesus says the act is worse than the thought, or you think it is?
From the text, I'm not sure what Jesus thinks or says.
So you don't disagree with Gloria, you don't know.
Gloria has said that the thought is worse, and I just disagreed with Gloria.
I don't think Gloria was giving her opinion. She was telling us what she thinks the verse says. So let's go there. 27, 5:27. You have heard, I'm going to say by the prophets, if you're okay with that, or the judges. Are we okay with that? Matthew 5:27. The judges and the prophets told you something. You should not commit adultery. I think that's almost a direct quote from the Ten Commandments. So we're okay with that? So we could say Moses told you. And then you could argue it wasn't Moses because that was written by God's finger, that God told you. So you heard people in the past told you that God said, don't commit adultery. Are we all in agreement who that God was? So I'm going to say that God was Jesus. Does anybody have a different view? That it wasn't the Father, that other God. It wasn't the Holy Spirit. It was Jesus that was on Mount Sinai. We all okay with that? So you heard me, Jesus, because I'm here now, telling you not to commit adultery. And then he said, but now, verse 28, I'm telling you, second time, because I've already told you before, the verses aren't framed that way. They're framed as two different people. Moses, verse 27, Jesus, verse 28. But the reality, it's Jesus in verse 27 on Sinai and Jesus now on another mountain. Okay. But I'm telling you that if you look on a woman in the wrong way, you've already committed adultery. And it says in your heart. So when you read that, Karchi and Denisa, you're saying that's not the more serious. It's the act. So I'll ask another question. In verse 29, I hope we don't get too gross. I'll try to be politically correct. If you did the physical act, what should get chopped off? Can you go with the implied graphic there? The grossness of it? You have illegal sex, so you get it chopped off. Does that sound fair? A fair punishment for the crime? I'm not asking you about if you like the legal system. I'm saying, does that sound reasonable? If a man uses his genitalia in the wrong way, cut it off so he can't do it again. Does that sound okay? I'm not asking about your level of morality. I'm saying, is it reasonable? Why is it not reasonable? You use your body part in the wrong way, get rid of it so you can't commit the crime again. We know Jesus doesn't say that. What did Jesus say? Because you don't have a problem with what Jesus said now. Your eye that you used to look sexually upon a woman, what should happen to your eye? You cut your eye out. Didn't say cut your thing off. So which is the worst? The looking or the action? Because it tells you what the punishment should be. You chop your eye out, not your other body part. I would suggest it indicates it, just at that level of argument, that's the bigger crime, the looking, the thinking. Out of the abundance of the heart, actions flow. And I know you're going to say, well, I've said different in the past, which is fine. I don't know if you're persuaded enough yet, Kachi and Denisa.
The question was, what is worse? And I would ask, for whom?
What is the worst crime? The man is going to have illegal sex, or the man is going to look illegally at a woman.
Act.
Then why does Jesus even bring this up?
The worst thing is the act.
Hundreds of years ago, you were told about the act. If men act badly, it's not good. Then why does Jesus say, but I'm going to tell you something else? If it's not worse, what's the point of telling them that? If it's a lesser crime.
Even say that it starts already at the thought. And that it will have an impact on salvation. And that it will have an impact on our salvation.
I don't want to get into salvation, because I'd suggest that maybe you and I don't understand salvation very well. Jesus says, you heard physical acts are a crime. And you don't think Jesus is saying that the thought is the bigger crime. You don't think that. You still think the act is worse than the thought.
In my opinion, it's the same, but he's just showing the roots of it.
At least we've moved a little bit, that now they're the same. That's fine. Tachi, are you persuaded or not?
I think Jesus tells them this because he wants to think, oh, they look different, but they are the same.
So they're as bad as each other.
I think so.
Peter?
In the verse is said that the adultery is in our heart. I think she thought that if I do the act or someone do the act, it doesn't affect already just myself.
We don't care about the other person.
And in this, it's worse.
We're not bothered about the other person. We're bothered about the criminal and what the biggest crime that the criminal is doing. Is the act worse or the thought worse?
Then it's the same. It's the root, as she said.
Peter?
In the sense that if the thought wouldn't happen, then the act wouldn't happen. It's worse. And that's why it's war.
That's what I would have thought, and I think that's what others are saying. It's the root. The root of the problem is the thought. If that's the root of the problem, that must be where the issue really lies. Isn't that what the term radical means? You can be a feminist and, trim the flowers, but it doesn't address the root problem. And isn't the root problem the real problem? So if it's the real problem, then it's the worst problem. Okay, we're in agreement then. I'll go to what Debbie said before. I'll just put the two words. You tell me if you agree. Forgotten now. I remember that word. We'll put judged here. We'll put judged. We'll put judicial. Is that judicial? And we'll put here moral. So the moral is the worst crime. That's what the issue is, the morality. And what I have said in the past, that you can't be judged on your morality. Without discussing it further, I'm just going to say it's too risky. But you can be judged on your actions. And that's why the judicial act we'll put law here as well. That's why the law targets the physical. Because you can quantify it. The I or the thought, you can't quantify. We all know that none of us can judge people's thoughts accurately. So we, as many Christians in the past, developed a model that said something like the following. God will judge the heart, the thought, the morality, and the reason we won't do that is because we can't do that. So, because that's where the real crime is, we have this idea that God's going to interrogate your brain, then write all the thoughts down so everybody can see them, and say, this person will die because they thought adultery. And there's no proof for it. But we'll trust God because God doesn't make mistakes. That's kind of how most people's theology works. You can see, not from this verse particularly, that we're moving away from that model of salvation. So I'm not going to say any more on that issue. So we've spoken about adultery, and we've gone from the thought to the physical. One's a moral framework and one's a legal framework. And in the Old Testament, Jesus says, you heard in the Old Testament that it's the legal framework that's the one that you should be concerned about. But I'm telling you, you should be concerned about what framework? The moral, not the legal. Are we okay, or any questions? So I've asked the question, why adultery? Why is sex, illegal sex, the grounds for divorce and nothing else? And we've had various discussions on that. And I said the reason was vulnerability. Some people like that answer and some don't like that answer. I'll repeat the question I've asked in the past. Why not money or theft? Or abuse? Or snoring, or any other reason you want to have? Why this one? Anybody got any thoughts? We've been talking about it for a long time. Good. Nobody has any thoughts. So, oh, someone had their hand up? I didn't see. Esther, before you say anything, tell me what my question is and then answer my question, please.
The question is, why is it vulnerability and not anything else?
No. My question is, why sex and nothing else?
Because human is okay, ik moest nog maar weer doen, sorry. Human is rejected in his personality when he's vulnerable.
He didn't get your answer.
When he's doing sex, he's rejected. He's hurt or vulnerable, and that means that he's rejected.
So I'm happy that you gave the same answer that I did, which is basically because it's the one that exposes vulnerability. But that's not a good enough answer for everybody, for some. So I want to try to explore a different approach. Anybody?
Maybe also because sex is something what is only in between these two people. That it's closed circle. Nobody else should have access there.
Like they
Also not, that's true, yeah.
but you can't get divorced for stealing.
That's true.
Okay, so we haven't got any further. Desperate to hear now.
But I still feel that between the bank account and the sex is a difference.
I feel there's a
see.
difference between sex and bank accounts. But we need to explain what the difference is. And that's where we're stuck. And you haven't given me anything. Okay, Marco. So someone asked, can I repeat the question? adultery, the annulling of this relationship. Why only sex and nothing else?
So my reaction was that it just doesn't feel right that this is the only thing. But like most, I think I've been struggling finding situation that would permit the situation.
You don't understand, you got to tell them.
And one thing that I thought could be
Didn't understand your last comment, by the way.
matter, I forgot.
Okay, carry on then.
Okay, preamble. Let's. So one thing I imagine can work as an argument for separation is if people become different people after marriage. This, I can imagine, could work through, for example, a gender thing. Discovering that you are not the gender that you thought you were. It also could, in my mind, work if you become a different religious person, a totally different religion. While living together and family just doesn't work any longer. So a proposal I have for the discussion.
So I'm just going to sketch that out. So these vertical lines are subsets or examples of divorce. From the Bible, there's only two given. And I've put this dotted line to say that there could be other reasons. And yesterday, we said incompatibility. We don't agree. So I think the several examples that Elder Marco gave fitted into that category. When we married, we both thought we were heterosexual until we realized we weren't. And for that particular couple, that makes them incompatible. When we first married, we had very similar worldviews, and then they changed. So what that dotted line is indicating, I'm just going to put today, the examples that you gave. But my specific question is, why does the Bible say only sex? It doesn't say if you realize your true gender or any other reason. So I'm not trying to shift the discussion now onto gender or religious differences. What I want to do, if it's possible to do it, is to get some rules or some idea of why it was that. So that we can, so if we're going to make some changes, if we're going to add some other reasons, we have some good argument. So I'll give a reason. In the Bible, it's only sex because they're ignorant people, uneducated brutes. And because we're clever today, we can come up with many different reasons why you can divorce. So obviously that argument is silly. But I wanted us to see simplistically why I think we need to do this. It's not to explain to someone else why we're changing rules. It's so that you feel comfortable that changing rules is okay. Is that okay? Why are we doing this? Debbie.
I'm still trying to understand why vulnerability is not a good enough reason. Vulnerability means in intimacy, and I've heard others equate intimacy into me see. In
You got to be careful with
me.
the translation might not work so well.
Yeah. In English, in and the Bible, Jesus uses the term know, to know someone. Which means have sex. So the vulnerability when two come together, it's part of their identity, who they are, that is being revealed. And if that is betrayed, when one, I'll say, looks on another or has sex with another, it's a betrayal at the very core of the identity of both criminal and the, I'll say, partner hurt by that betrayal. but I also understand the need to have rules. So maybe vulnerability isn't enough.
Anyone else? Chapter 8. Jesus is in the Mount of Olives. And he goes to the temple. Can't translate that? Is the problem? Got to focus on me, not on the Bible. The Mount of Olives. In the morning, he goes to the temple. And there's verse, no, verse 3. And some scribes and Pharisees come to him. And they drag in this woman. And they drag unto him a woman who was caught in adultery. They put her in the middle of the group in front of Jesus and say, we caught this woman committing adultery. Verse 5. Moses said, kill her. What do you say we should do with her? Okay, so we'll just stop there. I don't think we need to talk about the trap that's going on. Not really worried about that. How does all this work? We know why they're doing this. Hopefully. They're under Roman rule, and it's illegal for anyone to kill people except the government. The government takes you to court and can kill you. So there's an English phrase, ignore the word. You can't have a kangaroo court, which means you can't have your own court. It's illegal for Israelites to kill people. Verse 5, that's what they're asking him. Our law says kill her. And in parenthesis, you know what I think? So Jesus, who do you bow down? What's the choices? You bow down to Rome or God. You bow down to God or Rome. This is classic Sunday law questions. Then you'll see how Jesus gets out of the trap, which is fine. Committing adultery, stoning or death. Yes? So we're okay with that. So we're in John chapter 8. And I'll say verses 3 to 5. So it's adultery. And the punishment is whom? Woman? So in the story, but that's not the legal framework. If it's adultery, let's step one back. Who's whom? We have a man and a woman. Is the man married or single? It doesn't matter. Single or married. It doesn't matter. The woman, is she single or married? It matters a lot. She's married. This is not Matthew 5 rules. Who's bringing the case? Scribes and Pharisees. So she's married. So you have a man who has illegal sex with a married woman. That's the crime. What's the punishment? The punishment. So we've got death. You're free? Peter said no. The scribes and Pharisees. You don't know, Peter? Yes. He will die. Die? You know, because they said, Moses said, both die. This dynamic is one thing, that the sex was consensual. They both agreed. Are we okay? Okay, Denisa? If it wasn't consensual and he raped her, then what's going on? What's the punishment then? It will rape. Does the man die? Yes. Does the woman die? No. That's good. Question? One sec. We'll wait for the mic.
If the woman was single, what would happen to her?
We'll leave that for another time. It's not adultery. No. Essentially, she's innocent. Doesn't get any punishment if you were single. Okay, so that's the law. And what are they? They're only given half the story because they don't drag any man there, do they? They did not drag the man into the temple. Only the woman. Now, if you go and see Ellen White's commentary on this, she explains that this was all this was a trap. What we're addressing is that legally, there as well, and both should be killed. So, sorry. Legally, both are supposed to be killed, and they don't bring the man there. So why? Are they breaking the law? Scribes and Pharisees. Yes, we know that. Now, we could argue that this was all a trap and they did a deal with the man. All of that may be true. Back then, it may surprise you to learn that it was a man's world. I know that's hard to believe. In God's church, that it's a man's world, but it was. So it was pretty common. Forget that this is a trap. It was pretty common in such cases, the men get off free. And they would target the woman. Not much has changed in 2,000 years, has it really? In fact, even when that law was made, for that time to the time where Jesus is speaking, men tended to be not prosecuted, not punished in these situations. Sorry?
Legally, men had to be put to death, but they weren't.
Yes.
Okay.
You're a powerful woman, you'll be killed. If you're a powerful man, you'll get off free. Just like today. So some men might be killed, but it wasn't unusual for the men to escape any form of punishment. It's an illegal argument, but they could. She was like Jezebel, tempted me and I couldn't help it. Or the one that we like today, men will be men. All illegal arguments. Or he's a powerful banker and if we killed him, you can't. He's a powerful banker and the economy would collapse. Reasons, but they're illegal. Are we all okay? So we went here not to analyze the law particularly, but to say even though there were laws, they weren't practiced according to the law. They weren't put into practice as they should have been. So I want to put that, I guess, in the record. So I want to go back to the creation of patriarchal systems. How did that happen? I've suggested 3 elements. Remember? Just shout them out and I'll repeat. We've got selfishness. So I'll put childbirth. Solange? So I've got that, birth. So that's give birth. And then we said the economy. And we mean agriculture. So then I mentioned a book called The Patriarchs by Angela Saini. And what does she say? She says it's fragile. What else did she say? Lisa?
That the patriarchal model has created because of the agriculture.
Yes, that's pretty much what she says. Now I don't know if her actual career is the following, but she uses, I'm going to say she's an anthropologist, or she uses anthropological arguments, which means she believes in evolution, simply put. And she's going to say humans first began as hunter-gatherers, and then they went to an agricultural society. And she'll say the evidence indicates in the hunter-gatherer dispensation, there wasn't so much patriarchy, didn't really exist. Patriarchy came into existence when human beings went from hunter-gatherers to farmers. So if you can work through the mental gymnastics of going from an evolutionary argument to a biblical argument, it's about the same. In the Garden of Eden, what were human beings? Hunter-gatherers, if I can use it that way. They commit sin, and Jesus or God's going to now say, now you're going to be farmers. No more hunting, gathering. And that's what she says. But she's going to use it from an evolutionary model that is, I don't know, 100,000 years or whatever. Knowing those differences, do you feel comfortable in using her arguments? I do. You have to ask yourself that question. So I've tried to show that whether you have our biblical model or her evolutionary model, they both work the same way. Monica.
I just wanted to answer to the question that you asked. What else she says in the book? I wanted to say that she says that there are societies that do not function on patriarchal model.
Okay, so we have patriarchy, and I've given some arguments about that. I recommend you read her book. And I've given a sort of a brief overview of her perspective. If I say the top one is us, not just me, and the bottom one is her, what we all agree on, us and her, is it's this agricultural framework that creates the patriarchal model. So let's sort of just go back and show how it might work. We're hunter-gatherers. For sure, there's a physical difference. That's that first bullet point at the top. Don't know what that means, Humain. So Saini is going to go from people who hunt and gather that's animals and root vegetables, berries, etc. So she's going to go from societies that were hunter-gatherers originally, and they shift to an agricultural model. What's the big difference between the two? What's the difference between a hunter-gatherer society and an agricultural society? Don't say that they move. Don't say that one moves and one doesn't. Debbie.
I was going to say that agricultural model means remaining stationary in one place, not moving. So I fell into that trap.
Anyone else? Somebody had their hand up?
So in a agricultural model, you have to put a lot of work because there's no food. Thing starts from a seed. You have to work with the soil, the water, and you have to pick all the vegetables and fruits.
Just a side point. I can assure you these agricultural people didn't grow berries. That's got nothing to do with our discussion. Just that they don't grow berries. They're a waste of time. Denisa.
I see the difference in it that the hunters and gatherers did it together.
No. I knew the answer was too long. Debbie, version 2.
Yes. I would say the physical differences.
No. Now I've run out of time, so I'm being more pressure. You can leave it up. Tamina. I'll give the clue in a minute. Then
Wealth was handled differently.
sorry.
Wealth was handled differently.
We say health is wealth. They say no. They already shouted it out. Said it again.
Property is wealth.
So my clue was going to be intergenerational wealth. So intergenerational wealth is what Debbie just said. Land is wealth, not health. As well. That's what changed. That's what creates patriarchy. When you're a hunter-gatherer, if you go to like native Indians, North America, or the native people from Australia, sometimes they're called Aboriginal people. If you investigate their religious culture, who are nature? Humans don't own land, they're just caretakers. Go to Africa, you're born, you die, and you just wander around the place after animals and berries, and fruit, vegetables. No one owns land. As soon as you get to an agricultural model, and you're going to be stationary, so that was correct, that you'd be stationary. Now you begin to get to the place where you will own land. And what happens when you start owning property? Everybody's selfish anyway. It's not that you need men. You don't need men. You want to keep it in the family. Your survival depends upon that land. And that means that you need to keep control of that plot of that land. And your children can't go and gather berries or fruits or vegetables from somewhere else because someone else is looking after that place. So as soon as you go to agriculture and you settle down, that's when things change. Is everybody okay at that level? So what we're going to try to do is to take what I've said, which I've already said before, nothing new particularly, Before sin, after sin, hunter-gatherer, agriculture. So now we're in sin, which means we're going to do agriculture. Or if anthropologists will have their own argument, get to the same place. What's the connection between agriculture and sex? That's what we need to try to understand. The relationship between agriculture and sex. When we say sex, we mean illegal sex, which means adultery. Because people don't like the argument that vulnerability is sufficient. Let's pray. Holy God, we thank you that we're able to come together. May each of us not get distracted by all the technical glitches and problems that we have. May each of us be able to work through those issues and to remain focused and to remember why we are here. It's the truth that sets us free. This is the one place in this planet that we can receive the truth and understand it. Rather than complain, I want to thank you that this technology allows us to communicate with one another. Thank you for the blessing of being here in person and online. And help us to have a clearer understanding of our humanity and the development of relationships. In Jesus' name, amen.